This week we look at epistemology, which is the study of knowledge. So some important questions that epistemologists will ask is, what are the limits of human knowledge? Is it possible to know anything? And what are the conditions that must be met for knowledge? We've already been acquainted with one theory, which has stood the test of time, the idea that knowledge involves a true, justified belief that comes from Plato. Uh, Philosophers will also consider how we come to acquire knowledge. And two camps are the rationalist camp, which argues that knowledge is acquired independent of sense experience. So we can acquire knowledge through rational thinking alone. And then another being empiricism, where knowledge is acquired via the senses, and we also reason about this, sense information. So empiricism is not opposed to reason, but it argues that the senses, sight and smell and touch and so on, are the building blocks for acquiring knowledge. So today we're going to look at rationalism and empiricism. Starting with rationalism in the modern period of philosophy. So we have the medieval period where the church dictates what is true and ushers in a sort of anti-humanistic era where human reason is not considered important and rather revealed truth, and truth as dictated by the church is what is accepted. But we start with the Copernican Revolution, where Copernicus discovers that the sun is the center of the universe, and the Earth is circling the sun. And later with Galileo developing the telescope and confirming Copernicus' argument, we see a humanism being brought back into the world. Where the scientific method is being developed, and people are making discoveries. Now, a number of those people are burned at the stake by the church because they don't want to give up their authority over the truth. But we see people like Galileo. They weren't burned at the stake, but he was put under to house arrest. But the important thing to know is that Rene Descartes comes at a time when our understanding of the world is being turned on its head. Everything that we thought we knew, we find that we didn't know all that time, and the world is actually much different than we expected. So Rene Descartes is he's a rationalist philosopher, so he's trying to claim rationalism as the foundation of knowledge. But we're going to look at his meditations and look at an argument that he develops. Essentially, Rene Descartes wants to clear out any beliefs that he has that could even potentially be false, because he wants to find a foundation for philosophy that cannot be doubted. And then if he can use deductive reasoning and build off of that foundational premise, then everything that he infers should be true for all time, never to be turned on its head by at some later date. So he starts his meditations by finding the time to sit in his armchair and think. Let's listen. Let's look at a quote here. Whatever I have so far accepted as supremely true, I have either learned from the senses or through the senses. But I have occasionally caught the senses deceiving me, and it would be prudent for me never completely to trust those who have cheated me even once. So as Rene Descartes finds the time and space to think, he starts considering his beliefs, and he starts by considering beliefs that are acquired via the senses. But he finds right away that the senses have deceived him in the past. Okay, so first consideration: beliefs formed by the senses. Okay? If it's even possible to doubt a belief given by the senses, then we reject the senses as a source of knowledge. And sure enough, our senses deceive us quite often, actually. Uh, in our regular experience, we might see something that appears far off, but it's actually quite close. It appears to us like the sun is moving around the earth, and yet our senses deceive us there. That it's actually not the case. Our senses tell us that we're standing still right now, but actually our very planet is moving. So the senses often deceive us. And at the very least, they deceive us when we are dreaming. So another quote from Descartes, "But while my senses may deceive me about what is small or far away, there may still be other things taken in by the senses which I cannot possibly doubt, such as that I am here, sitting before the fire, wearing a dressing gown, touching this paper. Indeed, these hands and the rest of my body, on what grounds might I deny that they exist?" But then he points out that in your dreams, what you take to be reality is actually not reality. How often a dream has convinced me that I was here, sitting before the fire, wearing my dressing gown, when in fact I was undressed and between the covers of my bed. So the dreams, so long as you've been fooled by a dream even once, or you can even, maybe you've never been fooled, but you can conceivably be fooled, then the senses are put into doubt, because dreams, what are dreams but visions made up of the sense experience, that we're acquainted with. We don't dream, for instance, of a color that we've never experienced before. Or we might dream of some, magical or fictitious figure, for instance, a Pegasus. But that thing still has a three-dimensional shape, which reflects our lived reality. It has the body of a horse. We're familiar with horses. We're familiar with things that fly, and this thing has wings. We're just taking the stuff of our normal sense experience and putting it together in a new way. But it's still formed by beliefs that have their foundation in the senses. So because dreams can fool us, we should cast out any beliefs that are derived by the senses. Okay? And what we're talking about here are synthetic truths. Okay? And synthetic truths are truths known by knowing the meaning of words and the world, something about the world. Okay, and I'll give you an example of, by first talking about what synthetic truths aren't. They are not analytic truths. Okay, which are truths known by knowing the meaning of words alone. Okay, so an example to show you the difference here. An analytic truth would be something like, all bachelors are unmarried men. Okay? If you know the definition of bachelor, then you know that that statement is true. You don't have to personally know any bachelors at all in your life. You just need to know the definition of bachelor, the meaning of that word, to know that this statement is true. But it would be an analytic truth. A synthetic truth would be something like, all bachelors are irresponsible. there you have to know what bachelor means. So you have to know the meaning of the words that are being used here. But you also have to have some experience in the world. You have to know something about the world. You have to have become acquainted with a number of bachelors, all of whom are irresponsible. Okay? So that would be a synthetic truth. And Descartes so far has cast doubt on all synthetic truths because they are truths that are derived from some degree of reason. You have to know the meaning of words, but also acquaintance with the world. So some degree of sense experience. Okay, but so we haven't yet shown that analytic truths can be doubted. So that's Descartes' next project. Perhaps we can call into doubt all synthetic truths, but we might be able to nevertheless trust in analytic truths. Okay, another example of an analytic truth would be, any argument, any mathematical argument. 2 plus 2, 2 plus 2 equals 4 would be an analytic truth, because if you know the laws of mathematics, you know that that is necessarily true. Okay? So Descartes next considers analytic truths and whether there's any possible way we could doubt them. Now, Descartes is a Christian and believes that God is all-powerful. And he really means by that there is no limitation to what God is capable of. So Descartes casts doubt on even analytic truths because he thinks that it's within God's power to fool us, to make us think that 2 plus 2 equals 4, when in fact it equals, let's say, 5. Okay? But then Descartes says, well, God is also wholly good, so God wouldn't deceive us, because that would be against the nature of a wholly good being. So he comes up with another possibility. Now, importantly, what he's presenting here is not a metaphysical theory, like a claim about how he thinks reality actually is. He's just considering a hypothesis that allows us to doubt analytic truths. And so long as we can doubt them, we should not feel secure in believing them. So he considers a possibility where a demon, an evil demon, is manipulating our minds, has the power to manipulate our minds and fool us about analytic truths. So 2 plus 2 actually equals 5, but this demon has fooled us into thinking that it equals 4. And as long as that is possible, then we should not feel secure in analytic truths. So I would ask you, on what grounds would you reject that hypothesis? Most people would reject it on the grounds that that doesn't reflect their reality at all. They've never seen this evil demon. They've never felt their minds being manipulated. It doesn't reflect their experience in the world. But you are then relying on your senses to refute that hypothesis. And if you accept Descartes' first line of reasoning here, we must reject the senses as a secure, 100%, foolproof source of knowledge. So it seems like his hypothesis stands, that we can even call into question analytic truths. So where we are left with this is we have skepticism. We are doubting a whole bunch of things. I doubt my senses. Okay, it's possible that my brain is somewhere else and it's being manipulated by some evil demon, and I'm only thinking that I have a body when in fact I don't, because my senses are simply fooling me. So I doubt I have a body. I doubt analytic truths. It seems like we're at a point here where we are doubting absolutely everything. But that's where Descartes comes to his big discovery, okay? That so long as you doubt, you necessarily exist. And if you deny it, you affirm it. if I doubt that I exist, then there must be a thinking thing that is doing that doubting.